Welcome to today's deep dive. We are really thrilled to have you joining us.
Absolutely. We've got a really great discussion lined up for you.
We are jumping straight into a fascinating intersection today. It's this wild mix of ancient linguistics, metallurgy, and theology.
Yeah, guided by a brilliantly meticulous essay titled Fire, Gold, and Dust.
Right. The golden calf and the precision of the biblical word. It was written by Lev Moten.
And it was published on the Uncompressed Thinking channel, which always puts out incredible material.
It really does. And this is a remarkable piece of analysis. Moten takes a narrative that most of us think we know inside and out.
Right, the story of the golden calf.
Yeah, and he forces us to look at it through a completely different, highly technical lens.
He really does.
Okay, let's unpack this. We all know the climax of the narrative at Mount Sinai. Moses is delayed coming down from the mountain, the people panic, and they demand something tangible from Aaron.
Which results in the creation of the golden calf.
Exactly, this physical manifestation of power that they credit for their exodus from Egypt.
And then Moses comes down, sees the idol, and has this uncompromising reaction. It has to be utterly destroyed.
Right. But Moten's essay asks us to look past the broader dramatic strokes of the story.
To focus entirely on the precise physical actions described in a single verse.
Yes, Exodus chapter 32, verse 20. I actually want to read the exact sequence of events as it's recorded.
Go for it.
It says, "And he took the calf which they had made, and burned it in the fire, and ground it until it was fine, and scattered it upon the water, and made the children of Israel drink it."
What's fascinating here is the sheer density of those action verbs.
It's so rapid fire.
Exactly. He took, he burned, he ground, he scattered, he made them drink. It is a very compact, deliberate Hebrew phrasing.
But the real linguistic puzzle and the central focus of the essay lies in the vocabulary used for the result of that grinding process.
Right. The text notes that he ground it until it was fine.
The Hebrew word used there is dak, which translates to fine, thin, or powder-like.
It suggests a pulverized dust.
But why is that particular word choice so noteworthy? I mean, isn't it just a descriptive term for something that's been smashed up?
You would think so. But to understand the weight of that word, we have to examine what the text deliberately avoids saying.
Okay, I'm with you. What is it avoiding?
Well, the Hebrew Bible has a very specific, commonly used word for ashes.
Which is epher, right?
Exactly. Epher. You see it used constantly when the text describes the remnants of wood or animal sacrifices or to cities that have been burned.
But epher is entirely absent from this passage.
Completely absent. The text never once claims that the golden calf was burned into ashes. It specifies that it was reduced to a powder, to dak.
I suppose a casual reader might just assume that throwing something into a massive fire would naturally result in it burning up into ash.
Most people do assume that.
But Moten stops us and points out the specific material composition of the idol. It is a golden calf.
And the absence of the word ash isn't just some stylistic, poetic choice.
It aligns perfectly with the actual real-world physics of gold.
That is where the ancient text suddenly reads like a modern chemistry manual.
It really does. Because gold is classified as a noble metal.
Right. It sits in a very exclusive family on the periodic table, alongside elements like platinum, iridium, and palladium.
And the defining characteristic of a nodal metal is that it fiercely resists chemical change.
Particularly oxidation.
Here is where it gets really interesting for anyone who loves the science angle. If we look at everyday metals, their interaction with the environment is obvious.
Like leaving an iron tool outside.
Exactly. It reacts with the oxygen and moisture in the air and it rusts. It turns into iron oxide.
Or, if you leave copper exposed to the elements, it slowly develops that green patina.
Copper carbonate, like the outer skin of the Statue of Liberty.
But gold operates under a completely different set of rules. It is incredibly, almost stubbornly stable.
It resists bonding with oxygen, even under extreme conditions.
Right. If you take a piece of gold and heat it strongly in the presence of oxygen, it simply does not burn.
It will not oxidize. You literally cannot reduce gold to ash by setting it on fire.
If you get the fire hot enough, the gold will soften. And if you reach its melting point,
which is nearly 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit, right?
Roughly, yes. It will melt into a glowing liquid, but chemically, its atomic structure remains pure gold.
It never turns into epher. It never becomes an organic ash.
Which explains why humanity has been so obsessed with it. across different civilizations.
You can pull a gold artifact out of an ancient Egyptian tomb or a sunken Spanish galleon, and it looks exactly the same as the day it was crafted.
It doesn't rot, it doesn't tarnish, and it doesn't decay. It carries this aura of absolute permanence.
But the essay points out that gold also possesses another extreme physical property, its unparalleled malleability.
Gold is arguably the most malleable element we have ever discovered. The physics of it are just astounding.
You can take a single ounce of gold and beat it into a continuous sheet so incredibly thin that light can actually pass through it.
Which is how we get gold leaf.
Right. And if you take that physical property to its logical conclusion, if you apply enough mechanical force to grind gold finely enough, it doesn't break down into a different chemical compound.
It forms microscopic gold dust.
And the essay details how dispersing that microscopic gold dust into water creates a specific kind of suspension.
What modern chemists refer to as colloidal gold.
The tiny particles repel each other and remain suspended in the liquid, sometimes turning the water a deep ruby red or purple.
Depending on the particle size, yeah. But crucially, those particles remain chemically unchanged. They are still pure gold.
So if we connect the scientific reality back to the biblical narrative, it casts the entire scene at Mount Sinai in a new light.
Completely. The ancient text is not describing a magical disappearance where Moses waves his staff and the golden calf vanishes into a cloud of smoke.
No, it accurately describes a realistic, multi-step metallurgical process: heating, mechanically grinding to a powder, and suspending that powder in water.
When you lay out the physics like that, it's a remarkably grounded description.
But it also introduces a massive practical mystery, an engineering problem of antiquity, really.
Oh, absolutely.
How exactly does one person, standing in the middle of a desert encampment, manage to reduce a massive solid gold statue into microscopic powder?
The mechanical force required to pulverize solid gold would be astronomical.
Right. So how did he do it?
That practical logistical hurdle is something that historical detectives and medieval scholars actually noticed centuries ago.
Nemotin brings up Rashi, doesn't he?
Yes, the highly influential 11th century French rabbi and commentator.
Rashi looked at the text, looked at the physical realities of metallurgy, and deduced something really important.
He realized that a solid gold calf of that size would have been incredibly difficult for the Israelites to cast in a desert environment.
And even harder for Moses to subsequently grind into dust.
Exactly. So Rashi suggested that the idol wasn't solid gold.
Wait, if it wasn't solid gold, what was it? Did they use some kind of alloy?
Not an alloy, but a composite structure. Rashi deduced the idol likely had a wooden framework.
A carved wooden core.
Right, which was then overlaid with thin sheets of gold.
Was a wooden core actually a common metallurgical practice back then? Or is Rashi just making an educated guess to solve a textual problem?
It was absolutely standard practice in the ancient Near East. We see it in Egyptian artifacts all the time.
And even within the biblical text itself, right? Items like the Ark of the Covenant or the altars in the tabernacle are described as acacia wood overlaid with gold.
Exactly. It makes perfect historical and practical sense for a large, hastily constructed desert idol.
So if we run with Rashi's historical context, throwing a wooden gold composite statue into a massive fire changes the dynamic entirely.
It does. The fire doesn't turn the gold to ash, because we know gold doesn't burn.
But the fire does consume the wooden core inside.
The fire burns away the internal support structure. What remains is the gold outer shell, but it is now fundamentally compromised.
It's been superheated, it's softened.
Its structural integrity is gone, and it is left hollow and weakened.
It is now in a state where it actually can be mechanically processed.
When you look at the sequence of actions in Exodus 32.20 as a modern metallurgical process, the logic is airtight.
Moses uses the fire to compromise the wooden core and weaken the gold shell.
Then he uses mechanical force to pulverize the hollowed, weakened gold into fine particles.
Into dak, that powder.
Finally, he scatters it on the water to create a suspension of gold dust.
The precision of using the word for powder instead of ashes gives the narrative such a striking sense of clarity and restraint.
The author of the essay points out that for many readers, this restraint actually strengthens the power of the text.
Because instead of relying on impossible, magical claims, it grounds a massive theological moment in observable physics.
It forces the reader to confront the physical reality of the idol's destruction.
So what does this all mean for us? We have a text that holds up to the scrutiny of both linguistic analysis and modern metallurgy.
But we still have to ask the biggest question of all.
Why?
Exactly. Why go through this highly specific, tensely labor-intensive process
Ugh.
just to destroy an idol.
Moses could have simply melted the gold down into a shapeless, unrecognizable lump and buried it in the sand.
He could have, but he didn't.
Why go through the effort of turning it into a colloidal suspension and making the people drink it?
This raises an important question about the nature of symbolism and human psychology.
To understand the why, we have to remember what gold represented to the ancient mind.
We discussed how it doesn't rust, corrode, or decay.
Because of that unique chemical stability, ancient humans viewed gold as eternal.
It was the ultimate natural symbol of wealth, of kingship, and most importantly, of divinity.
It was the closest thing to immortality they could physically hold in their hands.
So when the Israelites gathered their jewelry, fashioned this calf, and declared, "This is your God," they were doing something profound.
They were taking mere physical matter and elevating it to divine status,
They were projecting their need for security onto this heavy, shiny, permanent object.
essentially claiming that this unyielding metal was responsible for their salvation from Egypt.
And Moses' response is a masterclass in theological deconstruction.
He takes the most permanent, enduring, indestructible substance known to the ancient world, and he systematically dismantles the illusion of its power.
He doesn't just break the idol, he humiliates it.
He crushes the immortal metal into dust. He scatters it into the very water that people rely on to survive in the desert.
And then he forces them to physically consume it.
Let's think about the biological reality of what happens next.
Right, because the chemistry doesn't stop at the water.
When you drink gold dust suspended in water, your body cannot digest it.
The noble metal resists the acids in the human stomach just as it resisted the fire.
It passes entirely through the digestive tract, and it is eliminated as human waste.
It is a visceral, undeniable demonstration.
The magnificent god they just built, the eternal idol they worshipped, literally passes through their bodies and is excreted into the desert dirt.
The idol survives the fire, yes, but only as dust.
It is completely subjected to human action and to the base biological processes of the human body.
The message is aggressively clear. This thing you called a god is entirely powerless.
It is nothing more than physical matter.
Nemotin frames this beautifully in the Uncompressed Thinking essay by highlighting the massive contrast at the heart of the narrative.
You have the physical fragility of the gold on one side and the true eternity of the unseen covenant on the other.
The people wanted a god they could see and touch, assuming that physical solidity equaled permanence.
But the material that appeared so permanent, so solid, and so brilliant in the physical world was actually easily broken, crushed, and scattered.
It couldn't even survive a single afternoon of scrutiny.
But the intangible truths, the unseen covenant, the moral law that was being revealed at Sinai,
But those things couldn't be touched. They couldn't be melted in a fire, and they couldn't be ground into powder.
those unseen words, those intangible ideas, have endured across millennia and fundamentally shaped the history of human civilization.
The solid gold was fragile, but the invisible words were unbreakable.
It completely flips the human understanding of what is truly lasting. It forces us to recognize that physical permanence is an illusion.
The biblical narrative quietly but decisively draws a boundary line.
Between what endures physically, which is always subject to decay or manipulation,
And what is truly eternal in a spiritual or moral sense.
gold is beautiful, it is rare, and chemically it is remarkably stable.
But at the end of the day, it is just matter.
It is subject to the laws of physics, and it is subject to the human digestive tract.
I think this is a brilliant reminder of why we do these deep dives.
True learning requires us to slow down. We can't just skim the surface of what we read or what we consume, accepting the basic narrative at face value.
We have to observe the details. We have to think deeply about the specific words being used.
That is the profound takeaway here for you as a listener. The realization that a single word choice powder instead of ash can completely unlock a complex interplay between ancient language, physics, and theological truth.
It shows us that reality and the texts that attempt to describe it are richly textured if we take the time to look closely and question our initial assumptions.
Before we wrap up today's deep dive, we want to leave you with a final thought to mull over on your own.
We spent a lot of time talking about the physics of the golden calf and the theological meaning behind its destruction.
But let's look at the final, arguably most uncomfortable action Moses takes. He makes the people drink the dust of their own creation.
It's a fascinating psychological mechanism. When we make massive mistakes, or when we build up idols in our own lives.
Whether those are obsessions with technology, status, or material wealth.
Exactly. Our first instinct when we are caught is usually to bury the evidence.
We want to sweep the ashes away and pretend the failure never happened.
But Moses doesn't let them bury it. By forcing them to consume the dust of the calf, he forces them to physically internalize their mistake.
They literally have to swallow their pride and let the consequences of their actions pass through them.
So the question for you is this. When you recognize a false idol or a major failure in your own life, do you try to quickly bury it in the sand to save face?
Or are you willing to do the hard, uncomfortable work of fully consuming that failure, internalizing the lesson, and letting it pass through you so you can truly move forward?
It is a challenging concept. Taking ownership of our missteps so completely that they become a digested part of our history rather than a hidden secret we hope no one uncovers.
It is a heavy but vital question to ask ourselves. We want to thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive today.
It's been a great conversation.
We hope you enjoyed exploring the science, the poetry, and the profound precision of the biblical word with us. Until next time, keep questioning what you think you know and stay insanely curious.